that, I think all this kind of created a disproportionate fear about things getting out of hand and Pakistan, General Munir using nuclear weapon in an act of desperation. So I think that may have prompted the US side to intervene. I wouldn't say intervene, to kind of help out both sides to talk, to, stop fighting. I think that's what reflected in President Trump's statement yesterday. Yeah.
Let me also get in Ambassador Bhattacharya at this point. Ambassador Bhattacharya, can we trust the United States? We've invested a lot in the trade relationship. We want to get a trade deal done. But would it be good to add more skepticism in the trade negotiations now?
Thank you for having me on the show, Parikshit. But can I just briefly comment on the issue of mediation, if there was any, before I come to this particular aspect? Because I have that is slightly at variance. I believe that India and Pakistan have been speaking to several countries across the world as part of the briefing exercise, as part of the gathering of support and understanding that goes on in normal parlance in the diplomatic context. But I think none of this should be seen as an urge or a request for mediation. And I would say that this is the same with the United States as well. I do also understand that Pakistan was probably in a slightly different boat. And while it appealed to the Chinese and several countries in the Islamic world, it also maintained a certain level of engagement with the United States. As to whether the Pakistanis had sought mediation, I still do not know of enough information in the open sources that would be able to confirm that. But I think if you look at the two comments that came out from President Trump and from Secretary of State Rubio, I think we see that there are certain gaps which do suggest that it wasn't one in which they were really in the central role. But why they were there, I think it is for them to respond. The second thing that I wish to mention about mediation is that I do not subscribe to the view that Pakistan has a nuclear deterrence at all, in which it has that blackmail capacity. And I think I'll go back to Prime Minister's comment on that as well. And so I don't think there was any possibility of that being held out as a blackmail, which would have compelled the Americans to intercede if they did. So given that background, I think I will now come to the trade issue that you asked about. I think the trade issue is something that, as you know, we were early birds. Prime Minister Modi was one of the first visitors to the White House after the inauguration of President Trump. And of course, as has been mentioned, President Trump does have a penchant for the trade issue and linking it with tariffs in a very simplistic manner. And I think what India did, what Prime Minister Modi had done during his visit, was to expand the basket and say, oh, let's not just talk about a tariff, because that's not the only way out. We should really look at something that we can do on the tariffs, but more importantly, we should look for a package in which we have a much larger cake. In other words, that target of $500 billion of trade that we hope to seek is something that will give more for both sides. Also, the way in which it was linked up to India's linking up with the global supply chains and the possibilities of American investments and the possibilities of Indian investments in America, which will actually change the economic paradigm in which the two countries go together. I understand the negotiations on the trade front have been going well. Our minister, Mr. Piyush Goyal, was there sometime before all this had broken out, and I think he was optimistic. There are suggestions about 0 for 0 that we might have on certain aspects, which would be something, as I say, like an early harvest. So while it will not be a full-fledged free trade arrangement, it'll be something that will actually see us through and actually reap benefits for both sides. And sometimes these early harvest kind of paradigms are way more helpful in the short term while you build up the momentum for a longer term. I think President Trump has also brought up an important point. And just to finish off, what is the non-tariff aspects? And I think on this, the discussions with the Chinese that they had a couple of days ago were very important, because I think they brought it out to the Chinese that a lot of the parameters are really non-tariff. And
Okay.
when that aspect comes about, I think India stands to gain a lot, because we have, for various reasons, played more by the WTO book than many others have. So I'm optimistic on
All
the
right.
trade.
Okay, so you're saying that you're still optimistic about India getting a strong trade deal and something that will benefit Indian interests as well. Anju Gupta, to get you in, would you like to respond to Ambassador Bhattacharya? And also, how does India now win this proxy war? We've been fighting a proxy war with Pakistan for many years. How do we now win this continuing proxy war? Operation Sindoor is not over. There is a pause. But your thoughts on the proxy war?
Well, there are four different ways in which response is given to a terror attack or any security-related issue. One is diplomatic, then security, intelligence, and kinetic. So we've more or less seen all kinds of responses being given by India to terror attacks from across the border over the last, I would say, 36 years or so, ever since they started meddling in Kashmir, to a different degree. But of course, Operation Sindoor is at a different level. There is no denying of the fact that Operation Sindoor is at a very high level of kinetic response India has, given, and it is ongoing. My assessment is that we need to give a strategic response to this threat which is coming from Pakistan. And for that, I think the first shift we need to make it to accept that Pakistan will be part of our strategic calculus, which is not to say that let Pakistan die its own death, which one could hear, a couple of years that Pakistan is on a suicidal course because of very bad security situation, very bad economy, and that we don't need to factor them in. It's very important because Pakistan is a neighbor, and neighbor cannot be wished away. So that's the first thing.
Okay.
As we include it in strategic calculus, I think we'll start thinking. Second, there is a legacy of three partitions between India and Pakistan: partition of British India, partition of Jammu and Kashmir, and partition of Pakistan, which is creation of Bangladesh. I think these legacies have kind of created bitterness, mistrust, etc., tit for tat. And Pakistan, we know, is being ruled by Pakistani army. They are the ones who steer their security and foreign policy. We have to factor that in. And right. I think we need two things, I would say. One point is that if we can bring in more cohesion with our relationship with other regional partners, as in Bangladesh, China, I think it'll help us deal with Pakistan better. And my very last point is that international global alliances are very useful, have proven very useful in terms of tying down Pakistan. One example is FATF, Financial Action Task Force. And President Trump, in his first term, had initiated action to put Pakistan in the grey list, and which really helped with Afghanistan and with us in Kashmir. Because Pakistan agreed to deliver Mullah Baradar for the Doha talks, and they did not sabotage the Doha talks between US and Taliban. Second, the action was taken against Mumbai culprits.
All right.
Saeed and Sajid Mir. So I would very strongly, I strongly believe that I think we need to give a very well thought out, patient, strategic response to make sure that they have to give up their proxy wars.
Okay, we've completed our time. Ambassador Bhattacharya, very quickly, could you give us your sense on the role of Turkey in this conflict? Turkish drones were used against India. Do you see some direct help from Turkey to Pakistan and our own foreign policy towards Turkey now?
So it's well known that Turkey has had very close relations with Pakistan for a number of decades. And it's not just a very recent phenomenon. I think what has happened in most recent times, particularly during the time of Erdogan, is that Turkey has become much more vocal in its support for Pakistan. The second element that has come about with Erdogan is in his ambition for being the Caliph and the Sultan both put together, in which he has sought to enlist the support of Muslims from around the world. And given that he has very little support in the Arab community, where Islam was born initially, he has sought outside in Central Asia, in South Asia, in Southeast Asia, and in Africa, and the support of And Pakistan has been a very great ally of that. The third factor that has come about is that while Turkey's economy was a marvelous economy in the past, in recent times it has been floundering. But within that particular floundering, there is an element of the military industrial complex of Turkey, which has actually done very well. And for them, the Pakistanis provide a very useful export market. So Turkey has its own ambitions, and Pakistan is merely a pawn in that particular game.
All right. Thank you so much, Ambassador Bhattacharya and Anju Gupta, for joining us. We've completed our time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Commodity Champions. I'm Manisha Gupta. Well, India has set a target of record food grain production of over 354 million tons in 25-26, the crop year that will begin in the month of July. This comes after IMD predicted above normal rainfall in most parts of the country in 2025. Meanwhile, the wheat procurement has crossed 29 million tons for the current Rabi market season. This is the highest in 4 years thanks to the bumper production. The government is confident of achieving the target of 33 million tons of wheat procurement. Joining us now to discuss this is Somnath Chatterjee, CPO at ITC Food Division. Mr. Chatterjee, hi, thank you so much for joining in. It has been an interesting year and a very eventful week at that. I know trades of all sectors are finding it quite challenging to go from here. But when it comes to wheat, the government does seem quite confident, one, on the crop and second, on the procurement. What is your sense on that?
Good evening, Manisha ji. Thank you for having me. Indeed, it's been a roller coaster ride for commodities buyers like us. This year, we initially had a fright that it's going to be a early onset of summer, and the period post Diwali is always a worrisome period for the wheat crop because sudden spike in temperatures can impact the crop, but the gods were kind. We got a bumper crop, and as is evident from the government's procurement numbers, we've done 29 million, as you've just pointed out. And yes, I think 31 million is a foregone conclusion. What that means is that after a period of 2 to 3 years, we are now once again going to be quite comfortable in our wheat stock position as a country. There are no thoughts of imports at the moment with this kind of a crop. The government will have enough in its granaries to meet all obligations of PDS and other allocations. There have been some very interesting developments. The government of India, for instance, has just issued 3 to 4 months supply in PDS in view of the border tensions, so that there is no fear in the minds of the public that India is blessed with enough food grains. So that is one of the things which is happening.